Fresh out the oven, it's Cinema Bums. I'm Wade.
And I'm Emmett.
Cinema Bums is a podcast where we watch through every single movie in popular film franchises, one each week, to try and track how the storytelling changes over time. Today we are continuing our mini-series. Oh, I didn't write it down. What's it called? The Baz Batch.
Yes, the Baz Batch.
Covering every film directed by Baz Luhrmann. We will fully spoil today's film, Romeo plus Juliet, but we will not spoil any future entries in the series. Emmett, how are you doing?
I am in a very fragile headspace. And I think we need to talk about why before we can move on and deal with the rest of this episode, because it is relevant to the podcast. Okay. I received damaging information recently, and I'm not sure how recently because I don't know when this podcast is going to come out relative to what day it is. But I learned recently that Hugh Jackman will be returning as Wolverine in Deadpool 3, and I'm alarmed and saddened by every aspect of that information, including the fact that it's going to be part of the MCU. And I just thought we should take a moment, certainly not of silence, but of something at the beginning of the episode to mark that.
Wow, yeah.
You know we're contractually obliged to watch this movie, Wade.
Yeah, I know. I guess my first thought immediately was about the podcast when I saw the news. And then I immediately thought, how will Emmett take this?
Oh, that's all. I'm very excited about Romeo plus Juliet, though. And because we have an exciting guest.
We do have an exciting guest. Our first guest in a little bit, but a guest we've been wanting to have on for a long time. Please welcome Austin Spero. Woo!
Hi, what an intro.
How's it going, Austin?
It's going pretty good. I'm here. I'm in New York, best city in the world, the city that never sleeps. I'm excited that you asked me to do this because I could talk about any Claire Danes. For me, this is like always the Claire Danes series because I think she's just the most phenomenal actress of all time ever. And Romeo plus Juliet, it's a classic. It's a modern classic, and it's older than me even, which is crazy.
That is crazy.
How are you guys doing?
I'm doing good. She was really good in this. I feel like I definitely paid attention to her performance a lot more and caught all the stuff she was doing this time. But I'm sure we're going to talk about that a little more as we go on. Austin, what is your history with this movie? When did you see it first? And how have your thoughts on it developed over time?
Honestly, every time I'm about to say Romeo plus Juliet, it feels so obnoxious. And there is the conceit of the film, I guess.
Well, the full title is William Shakespeare's Romeo plus Juliet.
And I think I grew up with the DVD, and why I had a DVD of it in my house when it fully was VHS era, the world may never know. But it sticks out to me, the little plus sign. I'm like, this one's different. You know what I mean? I first saw it probably, honestly, if I'm being honest, I probably saw it in high school. Mm-hmm. It was giving compare and contrast. We watched the one with, who were the two white people? You know the one where he shows his butt in the.
Yes, the Franco Zeffirelli version.
Yes,
compare and contrast vibes. We watched the William Shakespeare's Romeo plus Juliet, and I was thinking that was my first time. I'd never seen a Baz Luhrmann film before. I was like, okay, that didn't mean anything to me. And now he's like, oh, Baz Luhrmann films are so iconic. Although I'm there really are only 4 that mean anything to me. So I guess that's all you need as a filmmaker. That's all you need. But I just thought it was balls to the wall, crazy cool. And to this day, I'm it is, I would say, the most exciting adaptation of a Shakespeare play. It just hits all the boxes for me of modernization. Does it track logically at some parts? Not at all. Absolutely not. And that to me is so exciting. I was thinking, watching it, I said, in what world in this day and age, in our year 2022, would we ever get a movie like this today? We would never.
Yes.
We would never. It would be so cut and paste. Everything would make all these logical little sense. The movie version of Romeo and Juliet today, we've seen it, and it's in the dark, and they're British, and they live in castles, and it's boring, and no one saw it. But this movie lives on, and we're literally talking about it past the lifespan of my life. So that's all you need to know.
Damn.
That's my initial impressions, if you will.
That's true. I don't know if either of you have seen the Haley Steinfeld version from 2013, but it is real bad.
Really?
Damian Lewis is in that too, right?
Yes.
Hey, do you remember when Haley Steinfeld was like the hot new thing? It was like, y'all, Haley Steinfeld hit the scene and she's about to take over after True Grit. And then it's just like.
And then what happened?
I think she did like a Pitch Perfect. Is that her?
Maybe. I don't know.
And that tells you all you need to know about her career.
I love when Haley Steinfeld remembers that she's a pop star when she'll like drop one single every 5 years and be like, oh, I do this too.
I feel so bad for her because like she's probably the most irrelevant of the Oscar winners. Did she win an Oscar or did I just give her one?
Did she get nominated?
Or did she not even get one?
She get nominated for one for sure, but did she win it?
She got no. I don't think she won. If you can name one Haley Steinfeld song, I will Venmo you. I couldn't even give you a single.
She was nominated. She did not win the Academy.
You know what? Let's give it to her though. She deserved it.
Oh man, she deserved it.
She's got a Peabody though.
What?
The Peabody. To be honest, I couldn't even tell you if the Peabody is like an American award or a British award or a worldwide award. I couldn't tell you.
I don't know either. Emmett, when did you see this movie, Romeo plus Juliet?
Probably also in like early high school.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like I think like in my freshman year of high school, Charles probably showed this to us. And similarly to what Austin was saying, with the other version where you're doing like the compare and contrast thing, and the obvious answer is this one slaps and the other one is cold cheese. And it's like, what are you even talking about? Like, what? And like everybody in that other one constantly looks like they're like smelling a bad smell while they're talking. And this one, everybody's on meth and it's exciting. I don't know what to tell you. This is like, I think what Baz Luhrmann gets is that Romeo and Juliet is not a morality tale. It is just like, you know, it's just like, whoa, look at this stuff happening. And then it happens, and then you're like impressed. And guess what? You know, it's genius. It lasts exactly 2 hours from opening credits to finish.
Oh my God. I was going to say this. We gotta give it to Baz for that because you know that he says 2 hours traffic in the opening. You know that he was like 2 hours on the dot.
On the dot!
Not a second over.
Yeah.
Before I like sat them to watch, I was like, let me just Google the runtime. Obviously, let me play now. And then when they hit you with the broadcast, that it's supposed to be two, I was like, oh my God. Wow, he really hit the nail on the head.
You know that he was in the editing booth adjusting the speed of the credits, trying to get it down to 2 hours on the dot.
People not leaving the editing bay for weeks on end, taking off frames at a time. It cannot be 121. It needs to be.
But that shows. Talk about how much you have to cut out of Romeo and Juliet to actually get it to run at 2 hours on a stage. I mean, he is putting in serious work on this movie.
And yet I feel like he still leaves in a lot that I often see cut. It's not necessarily a bad thing, but I think that he is taking like the adaptation part of it very seriously, you know?
Yeah, I feel like the only person missing is what's his name? The friar.
Oh yeah, the other friar. The other
friar. Like I can't even tell you his real name. Like so, like I'm not missing him.
Yeah.
There's also this weird thing in the play. I just want to shout this out. There's this weird subplot about like the band, and I saw one production that left it in, and I was like, did these people invent like a 10-minute subplot about this? And then I looked it up, and it's also in the real play. It just always gets cut. It's like a little diversion in the middle.
That's the fun thing about like reading Romeo and Juliet for the first time. Because say what you will about like Hamlet or Macbeth, but like you don't actually know that like the stories are not in the cultural ethos in the same way that like Romeo and Juliet are. Like they're just not. there's nothing else really like that where you know the beginning, middle, and the end of Romeo and Juliet before you ever read it. So when you read it and you're like, there's all kinds of just like wacky little twists and turns that are so exciting.
Yeah.
And yes, teachers will be like, it's so exciting that like Shakespeare will like tell you they're dead at the beginning, they're star-crossed at the very beginning, and you're still interested. But like, I don't know why we spend our time with that because it's so in the culture anyway. What happens, but like the actual plotting of it from start to finish is so thrilling. This is not just like a a morality tale or just like this like, passed on legend. Like it actually is a real written play and a play that was performed with a lot of plot to it, which is just so exciting to like come across that for the first time.
Yeah. I've got a quote here from Baz that I think talks about that. I really love this quote. This was him talking about his approach to the material. He said, I wanted to look at the way Shakespeare might make a movie out of one of his plays if he was a director. We don't know a lot about Shakespeare, but we do know he would have made a movie. We know that he was playing for 3,000 drunken audience members, from the street sweeper to the Queen of England, and his competition for entertainment was prostitution and people fighting bears. So he was a relentless entertainer and a user of incredible devices and tricks to ultimately create something that had meaning. That was what we wanted to do.
And, that quote I find so profound because what movie would I compare William Shakespeare's Romeo plus Juliet to? I would say it is like the Don't Worry Darling of its time. It really is because it hits on all these themes and it adds in. There's so much imagery that feels like a movie, and the imagery is out of control. Does the imagery oftentimes make dramaturgical sense? Not even a little bit. Am I thrilled by the collection of images happening in sequence? Like, absolutely. And this movie had behind the scenes drama too, lest we forget.
Yeah.
Lest we forget.
Ooh, wait.
Absolutely.
I don't want to make up stuff, so like a way to better than, but I'm pretty sure that like they like built it around Leo, and then I don't know who they had before Claire, but I know that Leo was like not happy that Claire was a part of it.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I do have stuff on that, but before we get to it, I'm just gonna go down the stats here. This movie, William Shakespeare's Romeo plus Juliet, was released November 1st, 1996 by 20th Century Fox. 4 years after his first film, Strictly Ballroom. That's going to be a theme in all of these Baz movies. He takes his time between these projects. He's not popping out a movie every 2 years.
Wade, I just want to say that I think it's really strange. There's this discrepancy in history lessons where they tell you that the moving picture was invented in 1815. And here we find that cinema was not invented until 1996. What? What is this?
Really, can you imagine in 1996 watching this movie? Because when I watch this now, I'm like, that's a Baz Luhrmann movie, and I've seen like 1,000 music videos try to copy his style. But like, can you imagine never having seen anything like this and then watching this?
Well, it's wild too because like we watch it now, and even watching it 10 years ago, we're like, oh, this is a homage and like a love letter, as they say, to like the 90s. But I'm like, they made this film in the middle of the 90s. Like, I'm like, what did that feel like at the time? In a way, like, I'm like, if we saw the 22 version of this right now, I'd be like, what on earth? And that's when I'm like, oh, it must be a generational thing where I feel like if I saw the Romeo and Juliet today with like the phones and like the cyberbullying or like, I don't know what 2022 is about, like Trump or whatever, I'd be like, this is the worst thing of all time.
Yeah. Yeah.
Look, it's based on the play by William Shakespeare. That's in the title. You already know that. It's the second film directed by Baz Luhrmann, written by him and his writing partner, Craig Pierce. The score is by Craig Armstrong. This is his first score. It was also produced by the pop producers Neil Hooper and Marius DeVries. Won a BAFTA for the score. Runs exactly 2 hours, had a budget of $14 million and made $147 million worldwide. So it was a big hit and is still the highest for a live-action Shakespeare adaptation, not counting The Lion King. We're not counting the live-action Lion King.
Could you imagine? You're on Jeopardy to like name the highest grossing Shakespeare adaptation. And you're like, oh, William Shakespeare, Romeo plus Juliet. They're like, no, The Lion King, 2019.
positive reviews at the time, nominated for Best Art Direction at the Oscars. No mistake there. Emmett, if any of our listeners somehow don't know the plot of Romeo and Juliet, and also didn't listen to our episode about The Lion King 2, Simba's Pride, what would you tell them about the story of this movie?
Okay. So basically, it's about this band, and they only play funerals. And they're like, how are we going to get a gig? But then they stumble into this town where, luckily, people are getting murdered left and right because of basically a long-standing family feud and or, in this adaptation, gang warfare. Then the band disappears from this story. Two young lovers, Romeo and Juliet, opposite sides of a family divide, meet at a party. Who knows why they're at this party? They fall in love. Romeo's like, will you come and marry me tomorrow? And she says yes. And then they get married. And then in the interim of getting married, Romeo gets into a fight with her cousin Tybalt. Tybalt kills Romeo's best friend Mercutio. Romeo then kills Tybalt in revenge. Then Juliet is very upset about this because Tybalt, that's her cousin. Romeo is banished from town. Romeo is very upset about this because he wanted to marry Juliet. Juliet is upset about both things. They end up getting to sleep together one time to consummate their marriage and then get let down a rope ladder into what she describes as looking like a tomb. That's not the way to talk, man. You got to keep a positive attitude when you're trying to pull a heist like this. And she's like, oh yeah, I look down on you. You look like you're dead. You look like a dead fish to me down in that swimming pool, babe. I'm just saying. She really harshed his vibe before he went out to try and, all right. Anyway, then he's living in a trailer park and she goes to the priest because she's going to have to marry this other guy. That's Paris, played by a young and surprisingly funny Paul Rudd in this movie. Just like, why is he there? Why is he so funny? Why is the other guy who usually plays second or third tier mob guys in Scorsese films or something is there as Juliet's dad? They're in the salt bath together,
Oh yeah. That part is so weird.
And then she's like, I gotta go to the priest. So the priest's like, here, take this. You'll pass out. You'll wake up. You'll be in a tomb. Romeo will be there. It'll be all good. And all that goes to plan, except Romeo is like, oh no. Finds out about Juliet dying, comes back, I gotta kill myself. He kills himself right before Juliet can awake, see that he too is dead, kills herself. Horribly tragic. And then at the very end, Prince says all are punished. The families are both basically to blame for everything. And that's it. It's a grim condemnation of the sins of the parents being visited on the children in some way, but also about how violence begets violence, I guess. And also about don't jump so headfirst into everything or bad stuff might happen, both in love and in duels of honor. At least that's what I take it to mean. But on the other hand, it's not a morality play because there are good people in this play who do the right thing and they also get sliced and diced. So, it's not just don't do what Romeo and Juliet did. For instance, Juliet does basically nothing wrong except trust people who tell her what to do.
Talking about the violence, I had forgotten that Juliet blows her brains out with a gun in this one.
Yeah.
In my head, it was the potion too. And then they cut to the two of them cuddling with the blood splattered across both of them. I mean, that is something that they could not have done 3 years later post Columbine.
Dude.
Not to be morbid about it, but when we watched Scream 3 and they were no one can die on screen, I'm you could not pull this off today of having her shoot herself with a gun at the very end.
Yeah.
If the whole crux of your movie and your story is the violence, it gotta end with a bang. And the whole potion thing is that's for the stage. That's for the stage, baby.
Well, she also stabs herself in the play. It's gruesome in the play too. He drinks the poison and she has to stab herself. It's the 1500s equivalent.
To put it on the record, Romeo plus Juliet, flop or bop? Austin, I'll start with you. Do you think this holds up today as a flop or a bop?
Oh my god, it's literally a twofold. It's a trick question because oh my god, my gut instinct is shouting at me. It's a bop. It's a bop, 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 bop. And let me tell you why. there is not a more balls to the wall adaptation of Shakespeare out there that captures the essence of the play with like the commitment that I'm here for that will keep my attention, especially when you're in ninth grade. I bet you, I'm making up statistics, but 90% of people watch this for the first time in ninth grade. And it has to like engage with like the text in a way that allows you to make like inferences about. For me, I watch everything sort of like in my own creative process kind of way. I'm like, what would I do? And I think the choices that they make are so bold and so risky that it just stands up to me as like the singular adaptation for the sheer sake of adaptation, which is just so thrilling to me and makes it so singular. I can't think of anything else. The Lion King, the best we got besides it. Like,
Yeah.
it's so bold and the acting is good. Like, that's the thing that sets it apart for me too, is the acting I find legitimately good in a way where, do I believe that they are in love? Not necessarily. Do I believe that they to me, they're like two like very pretty influencer types, like for today's speak, where I'm like, I believe that they would think that they are in love and would go on this journey together. And she's so good with the text. She's so good. I just think she is divine. And Leo's really not bad at all. And Tybalt, I think, is so fantastic.
Something that was lost on me when I watched this 10 years ago, I think it was the last time I watched it in high school, is that John Leguizamo is really hot as Tybalt. That's what I was struck by this time.
Yes, the sideburns, like you're not getting that today.
How they like frame all of his stuff as like a Western. He's like slowly pulling out the guns at the gas station at the beginning and everything.
So good.
I feel like the opening is like, I could watch the opening forever and ever for the rest of my life.
It's like the craziest 8 minutes of film ever on film, ever.
And you know that main guy, Emmett, is Jamie Kennedy from Scream, is Randy with the pink hair.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so what's the torn about then, Austin? What's the flop side of it?
The flop side is that it's almost a joke. This,
yeah,
it's almost a joke, and I'm like, maybe Baz Luhrmann like almost even made it as sort of a joke. Like, it just is so, it's tacky.
Yeah,
but not that's without judgment. It's without judgment. It's like gaudy and relentless and colorful in like all the wrong ways, and that to me is what makes it bad and yet makes it like a phenomenal piece of filmmaking to me.
I feel like the nurse, everything the nurse does, like says to me that he knows it is a joke and he's kind of in on the joke too. You know, like her like is screaming and like in silhouette rocking back and forth in the window as we like pan out from the castle. Like, I don't think he is doing that seriously necessarily.
Yes, like for me, it's in the first 5 minutes with the guns called like sword and dagger. I'm like, that is the stupidest thing of all time. Like, that is just comedic genius. Like, what's it called? Post haste. Like, come on. That's like based on jokes. They said, okay, we're doing like 90s like LA gangs, and then let's fill in the blanks. I feel like it came from a visual perspective and not like a real storytelling perspective, which is like probably why the smart people will be like, it doesn't stand up. But as the viewer, it's like, you don't care.
What about you, Emmett? Flop or bop?
Like bop all the way. I love this movie. And there's this, I think it's Peter Brook quote, where he talks about how you don't want analogy or simile on stage, you want metaphor. Like, and so like exactly what Austin is saying about like, oh, it's visually taking from a certain like thing and doesn't have anything to do storytelling wise with that. And it's like, yeah, because it's not saying it's that thing. It's just like taking images and like using metaphor and like using collage pastiche. Boom, excitement. Wow. And okay, get this. This movie slaps. It's something where you can actually engage with Shakespeare in a way that is not as like pretentious. And so like the idea that it is a joke and that it is laughing at itself is like to its own advantage in some way. You're right. Like even the casting is like kind of a joke in some of the cases, like that mob guy being her dad, like Paul Rudd being Paris. Like that is inherently like kind of already funny. you know, just kind of on its own.
I think in any kind of adaptation too, especially with Shakespeare, because they're done 15 times a day all over the country, it's like any adaptation, a good one, should speak to the time in some way and like can only really be a product of its time. That's why when all these adaptations come out that are just like, they sat there in their, meeting or like, we want to make the Haley Steinfeld one that I never saw, so I can't really speak on it. I can only speak on the trailer, but like they sat there and said, we want to make Romeo and Juliet as it was meant to be done.
Oh.
Romeo and Juliet for the ages, that is timeless, and it ends up actually speaking to literally nothing.
It's such a good adaptation, and it is like very well acted too. Like, and like everybody's doing something interesting with the words, but it's like you have actors in there who are doing like the very metrical, like classical acting with it, like the friar in the one scene that he gets. And then you get like Juliet's dad or her mom who like are just like completely tossing it off, or even Leo, who is usually more like tossing it off than Claire is. It's like there's all sorts of interesting different acting choices, and it's all good acting. It's like all good acting within the use of the text, but it shows you like a whole pattern of it, I think. And I also think on top of all of this, you could be like, oh, this flashiness, all of this, like making it so of its time, this gaudiness, like all of this stuff is just like distraction. It's just like there to distract you from what's really at the heart of it. But if you are paying attention to what's going on in the background, that stuff is deeply symbolic and like cuts back into the story. So it's like he's gone deep into the frame and done work so that you can't even say like, oh, it's just flashy for its own sake, because like the place that they're in, you have like things up on the wall, and those things are quotes from other Shakespeare plays, or those things are like quotes from that play, or like it's all like driving back to the same point. And it's just doing visually what a lot of the text in the play does. When you look at a play like Romeo and Juliet, you're confronted with all these big blocks of text, and you're like, what the hell am I going to do with all that? And it ends up you can cut a lot of it because a lot of it is visual stuff. And like in this movie, I feel like he does a really good job of translating a lot of that language into visual in a way that is not just like for the sake of being flashy, while still being like a total feast for the eyes. Wait, flop or bop?
It's a bop for me too. I love it. I think like from a craft perspective, it's a masterpiece. Like from visual, like art design, costume design, the performances, the music, the score especially, like the movie making. I think it's incredible and like is still so fun and totally holds up. So I think on that level, it's like a 5 out of 5 amazing. I think actually watching it, it has a few of the problems that the play does too for me, which is that I care a little bit less once Mercutio is dead. Which is also kind of a Baz thing, where his movies tend to start as like montages and like Sound and Fury and happening in the past and present and future simultaneously. This movie literally starts with a trailer for the movie you're about to watch, which is awesome, frankly. But then like all of the Baz movies like hit a certain point and slow down. Strictly Ballroom builds back up to that big finale. This one, I like buy the tragedy of it, but I do think the frantic energy is lost a little bit in the last half hour, which I think is true of the play. And I think that it is like being a good adaptation to a fault, even including a lot of like all of the Capulet family drama towards the end that a lot of people cut. Like, I think he is arguing for the inclusion of that stuff, and it is really well done here. But it does end up in it being paced differently than we would expect a movie to be today, you know? But still, I think like it's great. I love this movie. It's very like evocative to me. All the imagery of like the ruined beach, like this town that clearly like was something huge at one point and is not anymore. And like that's sort of this like eternal summer that they're living in this like dead beach town, and all of that stuff I think is like really good, really well done.
He's just there listening to Radiohead and smoking cigarettes and being sad.
Okay, let's talk about the leads, and let's start with Leo. I think that he does a really good job here, and I think that it's harder than it looks because, in my opinion, watching this movie, most of the job that he has to do is like staring off screen, basically. Like, it is a lot of him staring off and having different emotions, and I think that he actually like sells that pretty well.
I think there's probably not a harder role to play, because the tendency for like the emotions of love, you want to play them close to the chest and like get very internal world about them. The idea of love is like the strongest out there, with like the idea of like what happy looks like, or the idea of sad looks like. And to make it actually practical, I think is a real challenge, especially because the archetype is so strong. And I think just like the pressure of like playing Romeo must be so daunting. And I think he just steps into it with such like knowing honesty, or it's like he never feels like reachy to me. He feels so steady in it, where I'm really like, this is the Romeo, like the youthful like James Dean bad boy of the town.
Yeah.
Like no one else could have done it. No one.
I mean, talking about him reaching, I like when I was watching it, it's like he's better with like the short bits of text. Like he's really good at that stuff. And then every now and then I'll have a monologue and I'll be like, oh no, he killed that too. Like he is actually like basically delivering everything you have to here.
Yes, and like it's not staged, and like I don't think I've ever seen a Romeo on stage that I've been impressed by ever. They're all running around, wide-eyed, bushy-tailed, annoying. Leo's like the first Romeo that feels like smart to me too. He feels like actually worthy of the words coming out of his mouth.
Well, you know, we did a Romeo and Juliet that was basically based on this movie when we were right out of high school at School of the Arts. I mean, like in an aesthetic sort of way, we were like, oh, like we need to be like gang warfare and like bright colors and like all of this stuff, and like had a newspaper article that we printed up for the program about how the Capulets and the Montagues were killing each other again. And I feel like our Romeo was also heavily influenced by this Romeo. I don't know. I have a lot of love for that character, but I do think you're right in that it's like the first time you see one that's actually smart, because I think a lot of people play Romeo as dumb just because he does dumb things. It's like undeniable fact of the plot of the play that he does some dumb things, but like, is he dumb? Doesn't have to be. And Leo looking off into space is the most beautiful thing you can ever behold. So it's like, what are you going to do?
Baz saw this in him and got him for this. I want to say, because this is like going to be a recurring thing in this series, is Baz working with a lot of people who will become much more famous early on in their career. So it's not like it was the first thing he did. Leo 93 was in What's Eating Gilbert Grape, where he's like the kid. And then the year before this, he's in The Basketball Diaries, and he's in Sam Raimi's Quick and the Dead, which is I watched not too long ago. Is actually really good. But in both of those, he's sort of like teen, like, and I think it is like that Baz sees the potential for him to be heartthrob, romantic lead, and like rolls the dice on him, and then it ends up paying off. Okay, so let's talk about Juliet. Originally, Baz casts Natalie Portman.
No way.
I'm busy.
The problem is that she's 14 years old and Leo is 21. She is like officially cast, signs the contract, and then they start filming stuff and they're like, no, she looks too young next to him. He looks too old next to her.
I feel so bad for her. No.
I know, it must have been very sad for her.
That sucks.
But I gotta think that's the right call.
That feels like it's definitely the right call. They shouldn't have cast her in the first place. But I feel like Natalie Portman would have killed it in this movie also. So
would have been brilliant.
Well, yeah, would have just torn it up. So,
and honestly, I'm like, I would still watch her do it.
Oh yeah,
she doesn't. You can be any age to me. I don't care. Let her do it.
Okay, so Natalie is out. Then Baz tries to get Sarah Michelle Gellar.
What?
She's off filming something else.
So your second choice after
one of these is not like the other. One of these is not. Like that's crazy. It was whoa.
And then Leo suggests that they get Claire Danes, who is on this teen show called My So-Called Life. They bring her in, they cast her. She's 17 throughout the whole filming of this movie.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
That is so crazy.
We don't normally talk about like the gossip that much on this show, but there's this diary that the actress who played the nurse wrote, Miriam Margolyes, wrote about making this movie, And in it, she talks about how she felt that Claire was really in love with Leo. He didn't feel that way about her. And then they were like always in conflict on set because of that.
Ridiculous.
I mean, how much of that is true, we don't know. But that is what is in the diary entries.
Of the nerves, yes.
Yeah. But Claire Danes as Juliet. Austin, what's your take on her?
Yeah, amazing. Is it her best work? Definitely not. Definitely not. She was 17, and her little, for me, Claire, like, it became like a thing that people make fun of, like, but the way she cries, I just find so, like, physiologically riveting. Like, I think it might be my favorite piece of celebrity acting is, like, the Claire Danes cry, and, like, the little chin quiver, I just find to be it's thrilling. And yeah, they're like, acting's not crying, blah, 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 blah. But I'm like, for her it is. And I find that just so beautiful. She's good. And I remember when we watched this in high school, everyone was like, she sucks. She sucks. I'm like, she's got like, the thing about Claire Danes is what makes her a good actress, and you can write this down. She's always got a thought. She just, I think, is one of the smartest looking individuals. She just, you can just tell she has a full intellectual in her life, and it makes her riveting to watch.
Yeah, I agree. She plays her as really smart in this movie. I feel like that comes through crystal clear, especially when it kind of becomes her movie after Romeo gets banished, and it's like she's really the lead for that little section. I feel like she totally sells all of that stuff.
I think it's interesting that gossip piece, because I do think she plays it realer than he does. But I also think that that's an aspect of the play, like inherent to the play as well. So I don't know. I think she's really good though. And I agree with the crying. I think she's much more interesting than just like the single tear thing, going down.
The single tear's out.
Like when she goes like, she like has a whole body reaction at a certain point. That's pretty impressive. They don't give her final monologue, which I wish they did before she kills herself.
Yeah.
I actually always think about that because, like, in acting school, girls were always trying to, like, look it up to see how she did it, and it's not in the movie. I think about that. I always am like, oh yeah, it's not in the movie, and I know that because
that's funny.
They also don't have Romeo kill Paris, which I had forgotten.
Yeah.
Like, as this was going on, I was like, wait, did I miss it somehow? Like, did he already kill him? Or did they move it later? And they just cut that part out of the movie.
Yeah. Which is interesting. I mean, it's the right choice for this movie. And that's like the best thing you can say for it. It's like it wouldn't fit well with this film. It makes Romeo less likable at the end, right? When you want to be sad about him killing himself. I think there's ways to play it well on stage, but I don't think this movie wants to do that. And I think you have to like approach it from a different point of attack to begin with to like pull it off right. I always think that's an especially sad part of the play when he kills Paris, because it's like Paris totally did not need to die. Yeah. And it's also part of why the prince is so pissed at the end, because that's his cousin.
And the people really go hard for their cousins in this
Dude.
film. Yeah. Like, I have some cousins I'd ride for, some cousins I'm like,
I feel like both Leo and Claire play like appropriately crazed in this movie. Like, they do go 0 to 100 real quick in a couple scenes.
Yeah.
In ways that, like, if you are like kind of checked out watching this in English class, I totally get how it's like really easy to make fun of because it's so big, But also, like, I believe them. Like, it makes sense to me that both of them, like, are that close to the edge. That she is, like, putting the gun in the priest's hands and pointing it at herself and being like, shoot me right now, out of nowhere,
Yes, but isn't that Leo and Claire as just, like, actors, people, too? Like, I get that. But I don't mean that even, like, as a funny thing. To me, they give, like, take me to the edge kind of people in every, like, I will put the gun in your hand and kill me because I can't go on vibes.
I feel like this is maybe the only one I've ever seen on screen or stage where I believe that Romeo is hyped up enough to like actually murder Tybalt in that moment. Like, I totally buy it. in a way that normally I'm like, I don't know if this guy would do it. It's kind of out of nowhere.
Yeah.
I mean, that's one of the craziest things to ever happen on film.
Well cast, because you don't have actors like that on stage all the time. You have rigid pretty boys like running around being like, and now I kill you with rage, like, and like, and I don't buy it for a second.
Wow.
Okay, staying on performances, I want to move to our MVP, OTP, our MVP other than the protagonist. So other than Romeo and Juliet, who do we think gives the best performance in this movie? Austin, I'm going to give you first pick here.
For me, it's John Leguizamo. Am I saying his last name correctly? Let me start by saying Mercutio had the potential. He has the potential, but I think he might have the one performance in the film, and this is his work across the board until recent years. It's just like a tiny bit overwrought. It's like a tiny bit broad in a way that doesn't ring as true to me in a way that the other performances do. The drag queen character is like interesting and fun. I think in the whole like, oh, is he in love with Romeo kind of storyline? I don't know if that adds there, but I think his performance in other places tells like a very like homoerotic, affectionate story. But his performance and I'm just like I'm like turn it off. But John Leguizamo as Tybalt, I just think is so sexy and brooding and like wild and exactly the kind of person that like feels like the Tybalt of this film to me is so comically villain and yet feels actually threatening. And still I can feel like the most important part, which I feel like is like the missing element, is like I can see beyond that being like my family and the family name or like my, part of this gang world, that I can feel like Juliet having like a very real sort of like older brother affectionate like love for, which motivates things from in a different way. I think he's like the full package. Yeah. And like I don't like I can't imagine like a more right performance.
Yeah, he's so good in it. I'm an MVP.
I think I'm gonna give it to Juliet's mom.
Okay.
Who I think is really interesting in like 5 tiny scenes, like 5 tiny like 5-second scenes as we get the camera like whipped across, but is like doing consistently interesting stuff in the background that like further illuminates the world yet remains within like the text of the play, if that makes sense. Like all this stuff with Tybalt and like she was in love with Tybalt, we see that like fairly clearly in this movie, which is not necessarily like it's hinted at in the play, but it's not like brought to a head. But I feel like they really go for it. And then there's just like all of that stuff between her and Claire Danes where she like can't look her in the eye. She can't talk to her daughter. She can't like actually handle having a conversation with her. And that's part of why she's crazy. Part of why Juliet is like on the edge like that. And like, like these parents are nuts too. Like their dad is like a total drunk and just a complete mess trying to marry off his daughter just like 2 days after the funeral. Everybody's crying,
What's up with the final moment with Juliet's mom, where like the dad finally turns on Juliet too, and then the mom like walks away and she's like, I don't know. It looked to me like she was like rubbing her stomach maybe, but she's like clutching herself and like walks off into the shadows.
It's giving like feeling the loss of my child in the most primal child part, like. Showing to the back of the house, like I lost my baby.
That is Christina Pickles.
No way. Pickles! Get it. All right. Wait, who's your MVP?
My MVP is not Mercutio, but I want to stick up for him a little bit. I agree that not everything connects, but I feel like the key to playing Mercutio is just that you have to tell us that there's something going on that we aren't seeing. And I feel like he could phase that enough, Like, I'm not totally sure if it is that he's in love with Romeo or that something else is happening, but you can tell that, like, he is, like, this fun character, but also something is up with him. But my favorite performance, at least on this watch, was Pete Postlethwaite as the friar, as Father Lawrence. It's such, like, weird casting. He's like the T-Rex hunter from Jurassic Park 2. He's like this old British guy.
Yes. I love this guy.
And they're like, we're going to have him play a priest. We're going to dress him in an open Hawaiian shirt. And his action is going to be like running up and down a spiral staircase 10 times while he sort of shouts the exposition. And it just like totally worked.
And he drinks a lot and like teaches kids about how to make their own drugs out of herbs.
That's like such a genius like framing of the character, because like he really is a guy that's like, hey, like I got this secret little potion that'll help you out. Like that is like the man in the Hawaiian shirt, like drinking up. We all know that. We all know this guy.
He's just hanging out with like 2 little kids at the beginning, and then Romeo shows up and he's like, all right, you guys gotta leave. Like, he's just a weirdo.
Like always there when you need him, yeah.
He has like such conviction, like in the same way he has like this insane monologue about what killing a T-Rex means to him in The Lost World.
God, he's so good.
And he like is bringing the same conviction to this role as he is to that. I also love, English teachers love to talk about how Baz like wrings the tragedy out of the end, about how like Romeo like fumbles the potion and he sees she's awake and like he dies knowing. I feel like he's also really wringing the tragedy out of all of this like mail business, all of the stuff that if the note had just made it to Romeo in time, none of this would have happened. And we keep flashing back to like the delivery guy holding the package right outside his house.
Well, that's the other friar that y'all were talking about at the beginning. That's like that whole business. That's in the 4th or 5th act. But it like has to do with the friar, right? Going to get him and he's not there. Can't get out because of the plague. You know how that is when you can't get out because of the plague.
The
plague. I also like Balthazar at the end. I like how he's just like kind of like an idiot, and they portray that accurately throughout too.
But they also absolve Friar Lawrence of the biggest sin that he commits in this whole play, which is leaving Juliet with a dead Romeo in the tomb. Because that's what actually happens, is Romeo kills himself. Friar Lawrence comes down and is like, holy hell, there's 2 dead bodies here. Then Juliet wakes up and is like, what's going on? And Friar Lawrence says, don't look over there. And she looks over there. She's like, oh my God, that's horrible. Romeo's dead. I'm going to kill myself. And Friar Lawrence is like, oop, gotta go. And then she kills herself. In the play is written, which, could really be blamed on him almost entirely at that point, because if he could have gotten her out of there, maybe talked her down a little bit later.
It is true. But he did bring that mess into the story. I never thought about it like that.
Oh, just a question I had watching this. Where do we think Verona Beach is supposed to be a stand-in for? I felt like a lot of Miami vibes, but I wasn't sure, like, is this about kind of a specific place, or is it just this world that Baz has come up with,
As someone from North Carolina, I'm like, it's LA. To me, I'm like, it's LA. It's also like, I guess that, like, oh my gosh, what's it called? Veronica Mars. Where are they from? It's like literally called like the same thing as like Verona Beach.
Right.
Neptune, found it. Neptune. When I think of like the reckless American youth, I'm like, that's Southern California, like drive my car, smoke my cigarette, like gang vibes.
Yeah.
It's like the idea of America to me in a way that like no other town, like New York never feels like New York 1920s is like America. And the same way that like in 90s LA, I'm like America.
Yeah.
It's very Lana Del Rey.
It is very Lana Del Rey.
At the tip of my tongue the whole time. I'm like, Lana watched this and was like, there's a world here.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, because here's the crazy thing that's going on in this movie that I think we've been like kind of circling around with us talking about like how cool it is and all this stuff and like the look of things and like talking about Leo as like a James Dean figure and all of this stuff is that the reason why this movie feels timeless is because he's in the 90s using a 90s aesthetic but with like a 1950s influence on like the look of all the costumes and the car design. And like it's influenced by that world, but it's just like all methed out with like the crazy cuts and like the guns and like with like all that nouveau riche stuff added on top of it, if that makes sense, That's kind of like my read on it.
like y'all know Fuddruckers, but they have those games that are outside with like you can drive the car.
Oh, uh-huh.
Oh, yeah,
And you
yeah,
can
yeah.
put in 2 quarters and you drive a car and it's like it's all like 90s, like you're going through and like you can't shoot people because like you're at a restaurant, but there's like still they got like hot girls and like dolphins and like driving fast, like living young. Like that's what the whole movie feels like to me. Like the experience of one of those little games.
Yeah.
Yeah. Even the music is doing that anachronistic thing where like sometimes it's 90s pop, sometimes it's like Radiohead, sometimes it's like literally classic music that people are putting like DJ scratches over and like remixing. And then sometimes it's like a kids choir singing 70s songs.
Who are actively in the world of the play, also just existing,
Yes.
like living their lives.
One of my favorite parts, like the little like gospel like moment.
That boy practically counts as a whole character.
Yeah, my MVP.
He's so good. Oh, I've got 2 more little things from the behind the scenes drama that I thought were funny. One, while they were shooting this, they shot this whole movie in Mexico City. While they were shooting it, the lead hairdresser was kidnapped and held for ransom for $300, which Baz apparently paid out of pocket and said, to me, it was a bargain.
If I was ever taken hostage and someone paid $300 to let me get out, I would pay personally more money to let the story never be that it was $300 for my release. That's humiliating. Jesus Christ.
Wow.
The other one, the last thing, is that after this movie is done, Leo and Paul Rudd are going out together, hanging out. Leo tells him that he got offered the lead in this movie called Titanic. Paul Rudd says, my father is a tour guide for the Titanic tour in New York. This is Paul Rudd's father, all growing up. And so he like tells him all about the history of the Titanic. And then he's like, actually, it's really interesting. You should probably take the role.
Wait, you guys, like, okay, not to tangent too fast, but this is, I like dated without dating. Like I dated them. We weren't dating, but we went on dates. You know what I mean? 2 people in a row. 2 people in a row. I was like, what has happened to me? That both swore to me that they were reincarnated from the Titanic. Like I'm not even like. And I'm sorry if to your listeners, if there's someone at home who also thinks that, and I'm making fun right now, but like
Right.
they legitimately were like, they were like, I've always had, and this was within like a month too, 2 different people. I was like, not again. They're like, no, like I really truly believe that like I always was fascinated by it, and I got these uneasy feelings, and I've always been afraid of water, and then I did some research, and I realized that I was on the Titanic. Crazy.
Do you think they knew each other? You think they had talked about it?
I should ask.
Wow.
Wow, there's some. Be careful out there. Be careful out there. But yeah, all that is to say, people love the Titanic.
Okay, final thoughts. Final plus thoughts on Romeo plus Juliet.
This is. I'm like, I don't want to spoil the rest of your series, but I'm like, the whole time I saw Elvis,
Uh-huh.
I just like Romeo and Juliet is the only thing I could think about. For me, it's cut the same way, and I was like,
Yeah.
there's like some movies that just like get it right when they come out. They just like get it right and like feel good in the time as a product of the moment and feel good 20 years later. And
Mhm.
Romeo and Juliet just is one of those for me. Same with Titanic, where it's like the criticism, it's like immune to it. We can joke about it to we're blue in the face, but like
It's unsinkable.
it's unsinkable, baby. And like, it's like Romeo and Juliet, Titanic, Avatar. We can't come for them. Like they can be as ridiculous as they want to be. Like they are immune to it because the craftsmanship is just that good.
Wow. Today's podcast sponsored by Avatar: The Way of Water in theaters.
Oh my.
Are we ever going to talk about that James Cameron's ex-wife, Catherine Bigelow, directed The Weight of Water? Has anyone noticed this?
I have never seen it, but I definitely had seen Hurt Locker and Zero Dark 30.
What about The Shape of Water? I feel like he's a real hack.
All I know is that for the past like 10 years, he's been like, the only marketing for Avatar 2 is like it's like this one's about the like water.
Right.
Like that's it. That's
the
all I'm
take.
like the entire thing is like it's the first one, except this one's underwater. And like the next one will be what? Like in space? Like there's only 3 things.
Wait, but to be honest, this movie, Romeo plus Juliet, is also kind of about the water.
What movie? William Shakespeare's Romeo plus Juliet, The Way of Water.
The way of all of them floating in water.
True.
With their wigs almost coming off of their head.
The aquarium.
Beautiful.
Emmett, final thoughts?
I love this movie. I think this movie will screen for decades to come in high school classrooms all across the country. And I think that's awesome. And if this is people's first introduction to Shakespeare, I think that's a pretty cool way to get into it. And then also, if you watched this and it was your first one, and then you liked it, and you want another good movie adaptation to go watch, you should watch the PBS version of Macbeth. When Patrick Stewart did it, it's wild and creepy and spooky. It's more like straightforward and less like hard adaptation like this is, but it is still like very much clips along and makes very good sense of it.
What's also more straightforward, and actually, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it actually might be the complete text with the Kenneth Branagh Hamlet.
Mm-hmm.
I'm pretty sure it came out around the same time. That's I guess my other favorite adaptation. Is it the complete text?
I think it is. That's what he said.
That's the whole shtick of it, right? It's like it's the complete text, but it's kind of wacky and fun in the same way that Romeo and Juliet is. They had fun. We're back to the time of like movies are for like realism, and it's so gross, boring.
I only watch horror movies and movies for the podcast now, for new movies that come out, because like what's coming out?
Avatar: The Way of Water.
Yes, what's coming out?
You mean you didn't go see Bros?
I did not. In fact, was it good?
I haven't seen it, and I guess I'm like a traitor to a class traitor. I did see Barbarian though, which I thought was just great fun.
I loved Barbarian. Oh my god. Did that get y'all going or what?
Yeah, I don't want to spoil Barbarian, but I was losing my mind in parts of it. It was truly like the most fun I've had, I feel like, watching a movie recently.
Oh yeah, so good.
I watched X after I watched Barbarian because people on Letterboxd liked it, and I do not like X. I thought it was sad and not a fun movie. That's my take.
I liked X.
My thing about X is it's only good when it's funny. And then when it tries to tell me tales, I'm like, turn it off. Turn it off.
Yeah.
No. But Brittany Snow, I would give her an Oscar, actually. I would give her an Oscar.
My final thought about Romeo, William Shakespeare's Romeo plus Juliet, is that making the Queen Mab speech about ecstasy is inspired. It's an excellent choice. Yeah. One of the best choices I've seen. Also, I think this movie also kind of works because it is like as steamy and sexy as it is, which is not like off the charts, but it is still more than most Romeo plus Juliet adaptations. And like, it should be steamy, you know?
Yes, because love when you're 16 is not like white curtains and like moonlight. It's just, it's ecstasy and like getting railed at the club. Like,
yeah.
Totally, which this movie captures. Okay, time for our favorite part of each and every week. Bums the Word, our quiz game. Today, I have 10 movies that are based on Romeo and Juliet, the play, but are not adaptations. So none of these are called Romeo and Juliet. I'm going to give hints about them, and we'll see how many of the 10 you two can get. I've started off with some of the obvious ones, and then they get, I guess, more obscure as they go on.
I can't wait.
Oh, jeez.
Film number 1. This is a 1998 animated musical. It's also a sequel. We've covered it on this podcast before. We've mentioned it this episode.
Is it
Lion King 2? Lion King 2. Lion King 2. And honestly, I just revisited Lion King 1.5 the other week. Probably the only Disney movie I've watched in 5 years is The Lion King 1.5, and it honestly was better than I remember.
Wait, are you not into Disney anymore, Austin?
Nah, man, I know.
When I lived with you, you were all about
I
Disney.
used to love Disney, and then it got bad. And then I got bad. No, it's like it's not because I was like, oh, like now I'm like too cool
It's too
for
cool.
school or whatever.
Fair enough. I can't argue with it. I wish I could sit here and be like, the Pinocchio remake was good. I wish I could pull out anything, but I really can't.
The Pinocchio remake. I can't, like, those words are just crazy to me.
The third Pinocchio remake this year, I believe.
If there's ever been a story for our time, it's Pinocchio. Like,
We just want to be able to know solidly when someone's lying. Just like for sure.
You know, they make a Chris Pine joke in the Pinocchio remake. That's all I want to say about it.
Chris Pine, like the person.
Because he's made out of wood, they like introduce him as, they're like, here's a boy made out of wood. We call him Chris Pine.
I'm sick to my stomach. I'm ill.
Wow. Okay. Well, I don't want to give that any more of an idea.
Okay, film number 2. This is also an animated film. This is from 2011. It is not a musical, although it does have like a big original song that I feel like people kind of remember. But it's not a musical. It's a kids movie. It's a British cast.
Oh my God.
Romeo and Juliet?
Is it Romeo and Juliet? Romeo and Juliet, yes.
Yes.
I wrote a paper on Romeo and Juliet in college, and I took Shakespeare and pop culture.
Wow.
I wrote an essay, pages.
Damn.
And I convinced myself it was a good movie, honestly.
Film number 3. This is a musical film based on a stage musical. It won Best Picture.
West Side Story?
Yes.
Period.
What did you think of West Side Story, Steven Spielberg's version, Austin?
I went to school with David, who plays Bernardo. So I was gagged to see him. I thought he was so incredible.
He's so good in it.
The rest of it, I think I was just like excited to see my friends, like, yay, wow, amazing. And like the best sequences, I still was not gagged by. I think for some reason West Side Story will always just leave me cold. Leave me cold. It just wasn't exciting. Like even America was not like exciting to me.
Well, it's very much that thing you're talking about of like realism. Like it is not like the bright colors fun version at all that he's trying to do with that one.
Yeah.
But I really liked it. And Bernardo is so good at it. He's so hot, and like the whole thing they add about him being a wrestler and like
it's so good.
Everything. Yeah, so smart. That's awesome.
We're good.
Okay, film number 4. This is a live action film. Came out in 1998. It also won Best Picture. It's written by a playwright. It is sort of a meta take on this movie.
Shakespeare in
Love. Shakespeare in Love.
Yes.
That's a really good movie.
That's another one I watched in English class.
Gwyneth Paltrow is such a good actress. I don't care what anyone says. She's fantastic.
Yeah. Jeez. Film number 5. This is a 2013 rom-com, but it's also got like a genre sort of element to it. This is a very 2013 movie. It's got sort of like a horror twist to it, I will say, but it is a rom-com.
Warm Bodies.
Yes.
Oh, 2013 down.
Yes, absolutely. I feel like you've seen that movie, Emmett.
I never have. It's one that's been recommended to me a lot, especially because I think that guy in it, I really like him in the X-Men series because I think he's the same one, plays Beast.
And Nicholas Hoult is cutie.
He is.
Yeah.
And he's good as the creepy little skull kid from Fury Road as well.
Okay, final 5 of the quiz. These are maybe getting a little more obscure. We'll see. Film number 6. This is a 2005 ABC Family original film. It is set in modern day. It is the story of two rival businesses.
Oh, it's the pizza place. It's, oh God, Austin, say it, because I promise you I will never know. But it's some pizza place movie, and I swear to God,
You're saying the pizza place? I have no idea.
Wade has made me watch this movie at least a dozen times. This is true. Wade's favorite movie, and he makes me watch it at least once a year.
Simply not true. I watched this movie once and thought it was great.
That's me about the movie Salt with Angelina Jolie. That's my movie that I'm always like, guys, we need to watch. Guys, we need to watch. I watch it. I probably watch it once a month because it just is my favorite movie. Like, and when nothing else is.
Is it The Crust Between Us?
That's along those lines. Yeah.
Wait, why have I never heard of this movie ever?
It's about two rival pizza owners in modern day New Jersey. It's called Pizza My Heart.
Oh.
Not The Crust Between Us. The Crust
Between Us.
It's so good.
Okay, next up. This is a 2000 martial arts film. It is the first film of a famous martial artist and a pop star. This is the only film this pop star was ever in because she died tragically very shortly after the release of this movie. But it's kind of famous for those two things, basically.
Wow.
I'm pulling up blanks.
I'm beat on that one, dude.
This one is Romeo Must Die.
Oh.
Starring Jet Li and Aaliyah.
Wow.
That's super sad.
Film number 8 is also from the year 2000. This is another adaptation of a musical, a stage musical. This is a much older musical. Let me see. 1960, the musical was written. The movie comes out in 2000. I don't know if people even really know that a movie of this exists. I don't think it made much of an impact.
Is it A Little Night Music?
No.
I was certain that was it. For some reason. I don't know why.
Wait, no.
He said not at all.
No.
No, but it's a good pull. But it's not that. Oh, you know what I'm reading here? That they performed all of the songs live instead of dubbing.
Wow.
Wait, and it's a musical from 1960. The film is from when?
The year 2000. This musical ran for a total of 42 years. It is the world's longest running musical.
Oh, is it Phantom of the Opera?
No.
The way to sing no is killing me.
I'm so sorry.
Phantom of the Opera is giving Romeo and Juliet. It is giving.
Wait, I thought that was the longest running. You said it's the longest running musical of all time.
My cousin was just here and she really wanted to see Phantom of the Opera before it closes, which I was like, sure. And then we found out the rush is only for standing room.
Wow.
Literally to stand for all of Phantom of the Opera. And I was like,
I ain't staying for 3 hours. No.
I can't do it.
I'd be laughing too much by the end. I couldn't do that.
This movie is The Fantastics. Ever heard of it?
Oh.
To be honest, my extent of the Fantastic is I only know that like the worst girl you know will do a monologue and be like, "This is from the Fantastics." That's like the extent of that I know.
Okay, film number 9. We're almost done. This is actually coming out, I believe, this week. So maybe it's a cheat, but it was actually tough to find 10 films for this. So whatever. This is a Hulu original. It's based on a YA novel. It's starring Caitlin Dever. You know, it's a little bit of a modern revisionist take on Romeo and Juliet.
Is it Juliet and Romeo?
No.
They do be modern like that. Wendy and Peter Pan.
Okay, can I sidetrack for a minute to say that when I was, I know I've sidetracked this whole episode. When I was in high school, we had to read this book because the author was coming to meet us. And the book was called Julio and Romance.
Oh.
And it was a modern high school adaptation of Romeo and Juliet. And honestly, it was pretty good. until the very end. The very end is like that they're about to kill each other. And literally what happens is that one of them goes, wait, our names are Julio and Romette, which is a lot like that old play we read in English class, Romeo and Juliet, and they killed each other and it didn't work, so we probably shouldn't. And then they just walk away.
Saved by the power of literature once again.
Wait, that's kind of iconic. I kind of love that.
I've never forgotten.
That's shocking.
I've never forgotten it.
Oh my! This is anyone can get published in this day and age. and they use public funding to bring that author to your school like crazy.
Yes. Wow. Oh, this movie is called Rosaline.
I would not have gotten that multiple choice.
Rosaline by Caitlin Deaver, coming to Hulu. Today's podcast sponsored by Hulu. And Avatar, The Way of Water.
If only.
The final film, I'm not sure if anyone's going to know it. I didn't know it.
It better be High School Musical.
It's not High School Musical, I'm sad to say.
Sad to say.
I am sad to say. It's a 1983 rom-com. It stars Nicolas Cage. It's based on Romeo and Juliet in the 80s in California. It has 2 different titles. I would accept either of them.
2 different titles.
In California in the 80s, 2 different titles? Any hints about like what these titles are or what they might have in common or anything like that?
Yeah, the titles are about the 2 archetypes that the man and the woman are. There's 1 title for each, basically.
Is it like Hunter?
No, it's like Mama's Boy or like Horse Girl. Like, think like those. It's about like the 2
Mama's
stereotypes.
Boy. Like Lover Boy and
yes. Yeah.
I don't know.
I mean, yeah. Lover Boy.
Shark Boy and Lava Girl.
Shark Boy and Lava Girl.
This film is called Valley Girl, also known as Bad Boy.
You'll learn something new every day.
It's so cool. Wow. I think we all won because we all learned about Nicolas Cage in Valley Girl or Bad Boy.
That is the end of the quiz. Well done to you both. And thank you so much for being here, Austin. This was awesome.
Yes, thank you for having me. Thank you.
Where can our listeners find you online? And are there any projects you want to tell them about while you're here?
I mean, you can find me online. Me vomiting up blood. You can find me online. I guess like my Instagram, because like it's like I would be like, oh, my website, but it's like not even real. My Instagram, it's Austin Spero, AUSTINSPRO. And I also perform drag all the time, so you can come see me always. My name is Reese Havoc, and you can find me at Reese Havoc NYC. Reese like Witherspoon, because it's a movie podcast.
Oh, yes.
Yay!
Oh, yes. Okay, that's all for this week. We're going to be back in 40 weeks to talk about Greta Gerwig's Barbie, and we're going to be back next week to talk about Moulin Rouge, baby.
Oh,
any hot take on Moulin Rouge? Austin, fan of it?
Amazing film. Yeah, and the musical. Have you seen the musical?
Mm-hmm.
Sucks. Garbage. The movie's so good, though.
Until then,
stay frosted.
Cinema Bums is a production of DKG Podcasts. It is created and produced by Emma Temple and me, Wade Lawrence Holloman. I also edit and mix the podcast. Our theme music is by Zane Holloman, who you can find on Bandcamp, and our show art is by Autumn Beckman. Our social media is managed by Laura Bennett. If you like what you hear, please tell all your friends and leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts, the 2 best ways to spread the word about our work. You can also follow us on Instagram at CinemaBums or email us at cinemabumspod@gmail.com. Don't flake on us. We'll be back next week